March, where the madness on the court takes over. And there's no one better than PJ Glasser and Ben Stevens to guide you through bracket season. This is Game Day Garage, the Quad.
Oh, man, best day of the year, first day of the NCAA Tournament. PJ Glasser, Ben Stevens here with you, doing a live stream for about the next hour or so, live reacting to all the games that we have going on. Of course, recapping the day that has been, and Ben, what a day it has been. We'll get into all that. And then we'll also get into the 4 games we'll have coming up tonight, and then a full slate of Friday games. We'll do it all again tomorrow with 16 more games on the slate. But Ben, great to be with you, man. We decided to push this. We were going to do this live stream early on in the day, and we were looking at the schedule, and I said, Ben, I mean, we got some bangers early in the day, my friend. TCU, Ohio State. Try and watch Nebraska get their first tournament win. High Point was my big upset of the tournament against Wisconsin. And then, I mean, Siena gave us all an unbelievable performance against Duke. So it was great watching that. And then we got all the games currently going on, and it looks like we could have some awesome finishes in a bunch of these games. So definitely we'll keep everybody posted on that. Michigan's up 8 right now on Howard. A&M an early 4-point lead over St. Mary's. UNC had an 11-point lead over VCU at halftime as they just started half number 2. And Texas, who, of course, beat NC State in the playing game in Dayton a couple days ago, taking on BYU. They're up 7 midway through the first half. So plenty of live games going on. Ben, what action, what bets do you have in any of the games we currently have going on?
I've got BYU Texas to the over of 157.5 because PJ, when you look at both of these teams, frankly, they both stink on the defensive end of the floor, and both are offensive oriented where they can go efficiently, of course, and play at a rather fast tempo. Now, Texas not exactly the fastest team in the country, but I still think we see some points in this matchup. Pretty good start here, 28-21, the Longhorns in front. The Cougs have not been the same team really in the absence of Richie Saunders, and I'm also hoping VCU can make a little bit of a surge here early in the second 20 minutes against North Carolina. But the Tar Heels just added to their lead at the break, up 11 at the half, now up 13, 41-28. I've got VCU plus 2.5, and on my bracket winning this game outright on the money line. Really believe in Phil Martelli Jr. and company. Had a great offensive first half for VCU in the matchups against Carolina.
I mean, the game I'm definitely sweating at. I didn't take anything in that Texas BYU game just because high octane, 2 good offenses, 2 bad defenses. I was hoping to get a good number with one of those teams, and Texas is starting to build a little lead. If I can get BYU 8.5, 9.5, Ben, like we got Ohio State this morning, when I bet them to come back, that's when I want to get involved in that game. What I am sweating out is St. Mary's. I took them on the money line. I got futures on the Gales, and certainly the concern, and this is why we love the tournament, is style of play, right? St. Mary's wants to go slow. They want to make it half court. A&M with buckyball, they want to press. They want to cause havoc. They want to rush you. And early on, St. Mary's was bothered by the pressure. They were down 9-0. They're starting to settle in, though, a little bit. They're down 6 right now, but that's certainly a game that's going to come down to the wire. So hopefully the Gales find a way to win. Nothing on VCU and nothing on Michigan Howard for me. I got to tell you, though, Ben, I'm maybe going to look at a second half under for Michigan and Howard. I think we saw with Duke and Siena, obviously, with the Saints having that lead, that double-digit lead in the first half, how that Duke defense just wore them down in the second half. You kind of wonder if Michigan, who also is one of the best defenses in the country, when they get in the locker room, Dusty May, the coaching staff, they make some adjustments and shut down that Howard offense. So that's what I'm looking at right now. But, man, we should have some great games, and we certainly had that to start the day. How about TCU and Ohio State? When we got the schedule that came out late Sunday night, and we saw that was the opening game on Thursday, I think all of us knew that that was going to be a 50-50 game, that people were going to have their brackets busted right away. Figured it would come down to last possession, and it certainly did. TCU gets the win. They get the cover. Ben, any big takeaways for you? And as we get TCU and Duke in the second round, early line looks like Duke 10.5. Any early thoughts on that matchup?
Well, I think you can look at TCU doing what it did today, PJ. The lower seeded team, ever so slightly, a 2.5-point underdog winning outright. TCU now this year, 10-3 against the number when booked as an underdog with 7 outright wins. I mentioned that because, of course, as PJ just said, the Frogs a double-digit dog against Duke. The Blue Devils certainly with a wake-up call today against Jerry McNamara and his Siena Saints. But TCU has been this team all year. It's one of the reasons I picked TCU to beat Ohio State, despite liking some of the numbers that favored the Buckeyes, who did rally to make that an awesome game and our first in the round of 64. But the Horned Frogs have been this team, PJ. We talked about it when the bracket was revealed on Sunday in our selection show Scream, that they have one of the weirdest, most fun, and quirkiest resumes you will find around college basketball and in the field of 64 now. And, of course, a few teams eliminated earlier on this Thursday as well. They've got some big, big victories this year. Neutral site victories over Florida, Wisconsin, road win at Texas Tech, home win against Iowa State. They also started the season with a season debut loss against New Orleans. They can be very helter-skelter, but at their best, they can be a dragon slayer because of that ferocious defense we saw from TCU early against Ohio State in this matchup. So I do think TCU has a little bit of life to keep that game competitive. I probably would have liked TCU plus the points a little bit more if Duke had kind of just won by 15 today and was not really tested by Gavin Doty and this Siena team. I think they woke something up in the Blue Devils, as we heard from Malik Brown at the half in his interview with Tracy Wolfson, saying, PJ, they thought this was just going to be a cakewalk. I think they're Patrick Gungba back, and Duke will be ready for that round of 32 matchup on Saturday.
You know, I saw a lot of smart people that were on Siena today, and I think the thought was, Ben, that with all the injuries that Duke had, they were going to get out to a lead and they weren't going to pour it on, right? Shire was going to rest his guys, not afford any more injuries. I don't think people just assumed that Duke wouldn't show up. I mean, it's the tournament, right? Like, you got to treat this game like you treat the Final Four. And it's honestly shocking that Malik Brown was that candid with Tracy Wolfson and that he told him that. But, you know, it certainly looked like it the way that they were playing. It's unfortunate for those that didn't watch the game. Siena played their entire starting five, truly just about the whole game. They had a sub with about 10 seconds left, but their 5 starters played just about all 40 minutes. They had an unbelievable first half. Ben, there was a stat out there. Siena became the first 16 seed ever to lead by double digits at halftime against a 1 seed, which kind of tells you the first 20 minutes that they had. But again, just Duke warmed down with the defense, the size, and both Boozer twins kind of got going. I think the Duke TCU game is going to remind me a lot of what Michigan went through in the Big Ten tournament, where they had the scare against Ohio State. They were laying 12.5 against Wisconsin in the next round, and people were looking at that game like, why is Michigan laying 12? Right? It's going to be the same kind of feel against TCU. So, Ben, it's going to be one of those weird games where if you bet TCU, they win or they keep it close, it's going to be like, why was that line as high as it was? Or if Duke rolls them, it's going to be, oh, there's the Duke that should have shown up against Siena. I ultimately think I'm going to stay away. When we were doing our selection show on Sunday, I told you I had TCU over Duke. So this was a matchup that I certainly thought TCU could win. I don't love that Duke struggled with Siena. But also, I at the same time, it definitely shows you that the issues without Caleb Foster remains, and Duke is trying to find themselves. TCU's got a great defense. They gave Bruce Thornton fits today. He had one of his worst games of the year. So that's going to be a heck of a basketball game between Duke and TCU on Sunday. Let's get to another one of the games that we have. And Ben, how about those Nebraska Cornhuskers? 29-point victory.
They did it, PJ.
They did it. They finally did it. I'll give the floor to you. What were your thoughts watching the Big Red finally get that tournament win?
It was just so cool, having worked in Omaha, Nebraska, covering the Nebraska ball team and seeing in the past few years a couple of historic seasons, but even a few years ago with guys like Keisei Tominaga ending in disappointment once again in the big dance. It felt like a moment, knowing Nebraska fans, knowing fans of this Huskers men's basketball program, that you commiserate in the pain. You commiserate in the end of a journey, always being disappointing to end out a season. So today, to see the way that Nebraska handled things, especially with the thought, PJ, that Troy was a very trendy 13 seed pick maybe over the 4, or at least to keep the game competitive as a 12.5, 13-point underdog. To see the way that Nebraska played today, as efficiently and as smoothly as they have all year on the offensive end of the floor, but to see Price Sanford put together the performance he did with 7 made triples, to me, it felt like Nebraska was understanding of the moment. And one of the things that I have loved about Fred Hoiberg and his call is that pressure is a privilege. They have not shied away from the conversation, of course, of the large elephant in the room, the proverbial monkey on the back always when you discuss Nebraska men's basketball, of finally winning a game in the NCAA tournament. They have owned it, and I think we saw that in its display today. An awesome moment in Oklahoma City, only about a 5.5, 6-hour drive from Lincoln, Nebraska, and it felt like Pinnacle Bank Arena there inside the Paycom Center. It was one of the most beautiful things that I have seen, because I know what it's like for those Nebraska ball fans to finally get to that pinnacle and to not have that conversation any longer. Anytime you bring up the Huskers having success in basketball, well, how about the NCAA tournament? Nebraska puts that conversation to bed for good, finally winning a game in the NCAA tournament. It was a really, really awesome sight to see.
It really was. And I mean, Price Sanford just showed you again why he's one of the top shooters in the country. I don't know what Troy was doing defensively. The one guy you cannot let beat you from deep and get hot is number 20. And time again, especially in the first half, he was just getting himself wide open looks. A lot of credit to Nebraska, Ben. I thought they'd win the game. I thought Troy would cover. I just thought when you're trying to win your first tournament game, like, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be a struggle. You're going to sweat it out. And I mean, they left no doubt. What a dominating performance by the Huskers. And we got ourselves a hell of a 4-5 game coming up on Saturday between them and Vanderbilt, who got by McNeese. And Ben, this wasn't easy for the Doors, man. They were down double digits in the first half. McNeese was really scrappy, but Tyler Tanner was the key for Vandy in that game as they move on. Early lines, it looks like Vandy's a 2.5-point favorite against Nebraska. As you mentioned, and as Mark Byington, the Vandy coach, was talking about after the game, it's going to be a road game, and Vandy's going to treat it as such. So it's going to be an awesome scene in Oklahoma City on Saturday. Early thoughts, Nebraska Vandy.
Yeah, I think we're going to see some points, total 148.5. I think both of these teams play at a rather fast tempo. Both of these teams are efficient on the offensive end of the floor. And Nebraska has struggled against teams that want to look for the 3 ball, which is what Vanderbilt wants to do this year. I think we see some points. Nebraska has one of the highest opponent 3-point rates in the country. In fact, the 5th highest at 48%, basically. That means 48% of the opponents Nebraska sees defensively this year hoisting from beyond the arc. That goes into Vandy's favor. But Nebraska is also efficient on the defensive end of the floor. Teams shooting fewer than 30% from 3. So it's not always a clean look, even if you have the volume from deep. I think it's an awesome game. PJ, when we were filling out our brackets here in my official bracket via GameDay Garage, I have Nebraska not winning just 1 game, but 2 games, and seeing the second weekend, which would also be, of course, more program history for the Huskers. So I think Nebraska does get the better of Vandy, but I think it is an awesome, awesome game. And I will just say this, McNeese gave Vanderbilt a great run. They did end up covering as a 12.5-point dog, losing by 10. We saw the underdogs hit at a 5-3 clip in our opening 8 games in the round of 64, which, of course, PJ, was going to be a huge conversation this year with how chalky and upset proof the NCAA tournament was a season ago. We saw Siena give Duke an absolute thrill. The first team outside of the 16s over 1s that pulled off the upset, UMBC 2018, FDU in 2023. The first team to keep it within a 6-point margin against the 1 seed since Southern did so against a 1 seed in Gonzaga back in 2013. And of course, I think the story of the day so far in the round of 64, those High Point Panthers, as you were locked in on, winning outright as a 10.5-point underdog against Wisconsin in one of the best games that I have seen in a while, 83-82, knocking off the Badgers. It was absolutely awesome, and it was a really great display. And we heard Flynn Clayman, the head coach for High Point, after, make his case for the mid-majors at this level against the best of the best in those power conferences. High Point put that on display for their first ever NCAA tournament victory in program history.
I mean, for people that think March Madness is the best sporting event, I think you look at a game like that as Exhibit A, right?
Yeah.
Just everything you could want in a game. Big upset, great shot making, entertaining. You have a stud in Chase Johnson who wears 99, a headband. He's chucking from 40 feet, Ben. I mean, that game had everything. It was electric. And yeah, I liked High Point in the game. I thought that their 3-point shooting and their ability to cause enough turnovers on defense, as good as Wisconsin is, they shoot a lot of threes and they rely so much on Boyd and Blackwell, and you saw it again today. And, that's a tough loss for Wisconsin, Ben, because they really are that kind of team. If they were to survive today, you feel like they maybe could have made a run in that West region. Instead, they go home, but give a ton of credit to High Point. Every time it felt like maybe Wisconsin was going to pull away and break that thing open, they would hit a big shot, keep it in striking distance. And then that run that they had in the final 2 minutes to win the game was truly incredible. So they're going to take on Arkansas on Saturday. Going to be an 11.5-point dog in that game. Arkansas gets past Hawaii 97-78. And really, Ben, this game to me was all about the start. I mean, Arkansas got out and it was like 14-2 right away. And it's just hard, for Hawaii to dig themselves that big a hole and try and climb their way back against an offense that good. If they would have had a better start, that maybe could have been a more interesting game. But again, when you're dealing with Acuff and that backcourt and all the scores that they have, really, really tough. Do you think High Point can maybe do it again? I mean, if you like offense and you like pace and three-pointers, that's going to be the game for you. Do you think maybe they got a shot against the Hogs?
I do, because, again, I think when you looked at that draw, PJ, it was one of the reasons I thought Wisconsin was going to advance to the Sweet 16 for the first time in nearly 8 decades since 2017. Now, that's a conversation that will follow around Greg Gard for yet another college basketball season. Got to the Sweet 16 in his first year, fully overtaking for Bo Ryan. Has not been there since, which is a difficult pill to swallow for Wisconsin. It's because the similar style the Badgers play, up-tempo, great offensively, want to shoot the three, don't really turn the ball over. High Point, aggressive pressure on the defensive side of the ball, forced 10 turnovers for a Badgers team that was one of 9 around the nation entering the big dance, averaging fewer than 9 turnovers per game. High Point doesn't really turn it over. High Point's one of the 50 fastest teams in the country when it comes to tempo, and High Point's a great 3-point shooting team as put on full display by Chase Johnston. I think that logo 3, when they were down by 8, PJ, to make it a 5-point game, to keep it within 2 possessions, was a critical turning point in his first made 2-point field goal of the entire season on his 5th 2-point attempt. Gives High Point their first win over a power conference program, by the way, in 58 tries. So I do think High Point can keep this game close, because Arkansas, to me, maybe a little bit more sound defensively than Wisconsin, who I think has struggled all year long on the defensive end of the side. But again, efficient offense for the Hogs, fast team, top 25 in terms of tempo. It's a very similar like versus like stylistically matchup for Flynn Clayman and his High Point team. I think they can stay in it without a doubt.
Yeah, I think they can too, because High Point's got the right idea as a big dog, right? Is just create as much chaos as he can and shoot a lot of threes. Hawaii was trying to do the same thing, but again, they got themselves off to a bad start. So if High Point can just hang around and create some doubt, I think maybe they have a chance. I do like Arkansas to win the game. I don't think I'm going to end up betting it. Some updates on some scores. How about Howard, Ben? We had Siena give Duke a scare today. Maybe the Bison are up to something. They're down 50-46 against Michigan. That total was 151.5 at open. It's all the way up to 175.5 now. So I'm going to take a piece of that second half under. I don't think we're going to see as much scoring, but what an entertaining game that is. A&M's up 28-22 on St. Mary's right now. North Carolina blowing it open on VCU. They're up nearly 20, and Texas still hanging on to a 37-32 lead over BYU. The other 2 games that we had today, Ben, Michigan State takes care of North Dakota State. Sparty pretty much got out to a big lead and never lost control, cruised to a 25-point win. And then Louisville and South Florida looked like Louisville was going to cruise to an easy win. And then all of a sudden, man, USF just puts the pressure on. We had 98 combined points in that second half. and you'll hear it a lot during this month, but numbers are important. Every half point, every point is important. USF opened at 5.5. They went down to 4.5, and they closed at 3.5. So for those out there that had Louisville laying the 3.5 and USF plus the 4.5 or 5.5, you got yourself a heck of a middle there. But it's going to be Louisville and it's going to be Michigan State. Sparty's an early 3.5-point favorite. Is this a wait and see for you, Ben, until we know the status of Michael Brown? Where are your thoughts on this game?
No, I'm laying the 3.5 with Michigan State. For all the reasons I was going to pick South Florida to beat Louisville, I think MSU is up to the task on the defensive end of the floor to make life hell for the Cards. And I think we saw, PJ, despite being up by 22 with just over 10 minutes remaining in regulation, the absence of Michael Brown Jr. really cost in Louisville. They looked out of sorts when South Florida started applying that pressure, which they are known to do, and playing fast and upping the tempo. Louisville looked lost. That should not have been a game, and it was within a couple of possessions. And the reason South Florida did not win this game is because they had by far their worst three-point shooting performance of the entirety of this season. They take nearly 44% of their field goal tries from three. Brian Hodson, a disciple of Nate Oates, it's what they want to do. They made 5 of their 33 attempts from three. And I think most spectacularly, PJ, Wes Enos, who is one of their best three-point shooters on this year, made over 100 threes in the regular season through the American tournament. And winning that conference for USF was 0 of 11 from deep in this game. A couple of threes here and there, even a 3 for 11 performance for Wes Enos from beyond the arc. And USF might have pulled off the outright upset that many thought they would. I would lay the 3.5 with Michigan State. I believe the Spartans will be up to that task defensively as they were against a really good NDSU team, the champions of the Summit League. But I thought we saw a really stout Michigan State team today that wasn't going to have this game be precarious. They weren't going to flirt with danger at all. All the advantages I thought in the matchup were for MSU against the team in North Dakota State that didn't really have that signifying thing that could kind of be the distinction against Michigan State. The Sparty put it on display. I think Sparty beats Louisville and beats them rather handily.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I would only look Sparty in that game. I'm not ready to overreact to Louisville after one performance. I thought Michigan State looked good today. I think their defense is also going to give Louisville issue. And if you're Izzo, like, how do you not watch the film of the South Florida game? Maybe pick up a little full court, try and make that a run and shoot kind of game. So maybe look at the over too. Maybe Michigan State decides to play a little bit faster than what they're accustomed to, but that should be a fun game as well on Saturday. We got 4 more games upcoming on this Thursday. Illinois and Penn are going to start things off, scheduled for 9:25 Eastern time. That's going to start about 30 minutes after UNC VCU. Illini 25.5-point favorite in that game. Georgia's a 1.5-point favorite against St. Louis in an 8-9 matchup. The Zags laying 20.5 against Kennesaw State, and then Houston laying 24.5 against Idaho. So we got some big spreads in this late slate, Ben. You would think probably one of these dogs, if not more, maybe you're able to cover, keep it potentially close. And St. Louis, Georgia should be a game that comes right down to the wire. But any plays for you in any of those night games?
I'm really interested to see what Kennesaw State does, PJ, against Gonzaga. This Zags team probably better defensively than years past, but not nearly as efficient on the offensive side of the ball. If they can get Braden Huff back by the time they get to the second weekend, which I have the Zags doing, it's kind of a different component. But I wonder what Kennesaw State can do because of the tempo they play at, one of the 20 fastest teams in the country in terms of creating some of that chaos here in that 3-14 matchup, of course, in the Midwest region. I think Houston will be in a good spot against Idaho, the champions, into the big dance for the first time in a very, very long time. Of course, if you win something called Starch Madness in your home state, deserving of a bid to the NCAA tournament. I think SLU in Georgia is probably going to be the game of the night. Everything in my being wants St. Louis to win. The Bills have just been not nearly as good, PJ, away from the Chaifetz Arena in St. Louis as they have at home this year. We saw that later in A-10 play on the road. We saw that in the A-10 tourney as well, losing in the semifinals against Dayton. I didn't bet anything in that game. I have St. Louis advancing in my bracket. You are going to get to see Robbie Avila finally in the big dance. Larry Blurred, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, whatever you call him, he is finally playing in the NCAA tournament. That's going to be a really fun game against a really good Georgia offense that is fast, that shoots the three, that does so efficiently. And know the name Jeremiah Wilkinson, their leading scorer. He is an absolute hooper.
Yeah, he certainly is. I like Georgia in that game as well. I think they're going to take down the Billikens. And watching the A10 right now in VCU, a team that really dominated that league for the final couple months. Ben, think about the ACC. I mean, Duke struggled, NC State lost, SMU lost, Louisville played good, but they nearly collapsed. So the ACC hasn't been impressive, and the fact that an A10 team is making UNC out of the ACC missing their best player look this good. I would also agree. Georgia would be the play for me. I did take a Illinois team total over as well at 88.5. I just think the Illini is such a good offense. Penn, that's going to be one of those games where you're watching. It's just the size, the athleticism, the skill, I think is going to take over. So those were the two plays I had in tonight's nightcap. Before we get into tomorrow's games, Ben, so I did bet under 176.5 in Michigan and Howard. I'm going to take St. Mary's plus 7.5 as well. I like that number against A&M. BYU is still plus 3.5, so I don't want to dabble. I want a little bit of a bigger number there, but those are the two live bets that I'll ride with. Anything that interests you? Are you going to ride second half under Michigan, maybe take the Gales plus the points, or anything else that sticks out at you?
It's really interesting, of course, to see the Wolverines only up by 4 at the break as a 30.5-point favorite, still lay 19.5. There was a lot of numbers on Duke, even live. They did not cover despite trailing by double digits at the half against Siena. But again, it is the expectation that Howard slows down. Howard was brilliant from 3 in that opening half. Cam Gillis doing it well for the Bison. To PJ's point, the Maize and Blue are the most efficient defense in the country for a reason, but Howard plays an aggressive brand of basketball. They'll put the ball in harm's way a little bit, but if they can get a good look because of that speed, it's not a bad area to be. One thing that is fascinating, PJ, total for the A&M and St. Mary's game was 147.5 pregame. It is 140 and a hook here at the break. That would seemingly, pace-wise, favor St. Mary's, as A&M necessarily has not been able to speed up this Gales attack. With where that is, I think St. Mary's might be able to claw back, but they are having difficulty with the size and the length of A&M down low. Texas up by 9 at the half officially over BYU, 46-37. I'm on the over of 157.5, live at 166 and a hook. I just don't love this Cougars team without Richie Saunders. I don't love anything really in that game. I will say, like you, I am on points tonight between Penn and Illinois. TJ Power is going to be good to go. The darling of the Ivy League championship game, despite dealing with an illness, he is going to play. They will be without their leading scorer in Ethan Roberts, who did not play in the Ivy League tournament either. But I do think Penn will play fast enough that the brilliance of Illinois' offense will be on full display. And like you, PJ, I think the Fighting Illini can name their number and we'll get just enough out of Penn to push us to the over. I bet that early at over 149.5. So nothing I love live. What I will say, though, for a man that is holding a VCU plus 2.5 ticket in my pocket, they are starting to make things interesting, but UNC continues just to keep things in front, now up by 15. I believe if the odds makers are correct, there will be a beneficial thing for the Rams on the offensive side of the floor right here, maybe from beyond the arc to make it a 12-point game. Let's see if I can see it. There it is. Cash, a 3-point shot made for VCU with just 10 minutes remaining in regulation, 64-52. PJ, we really need to see, though, VCU cut this to a possession or two if we are going to get this close whatsoever. And that's got to happen right away because you're getting in that danger territory when you get to the under 8-minute media timeout. If you are looking for a team to pull off the upset, and the team that is favored, even without Caleb Wilson, keeps things extended at 4 possessions, 10-plus points, that's when it becomes very drastic. And that's not what VCU does necessarily, like we saw out of a USF team that can cause that much havoc in a very short span of time to come back in a drastic way. So very important next 2.5 minutes or so for the champions of the A-10 and Phil Martelli Jr. in his Rams if they have any shot of beating North Carolina in Greenville tonight.
Yeah, Vasar just hit a 3. He's got 23 for UNC. They're just answering, Ben. You know, I mean, this is how games go sometimes. Team makes a run, and sometimes one team just hits all the shots to kind of combat that. And North Carolina playing really well. They're up 15 with about 9.5 minutes to go in the game. Let's look at tomorrow's slate where we'll do it all over again with 16 more games. And we started off today with the really good one in TCU, Ohio State. Ben, I think we're going to get another really good one tomorrow in Kentucky, Santa Clara. Another WCC SEC matchup. We see A&M off to a nice start against St. Mary's right now. Some spots you can still grab the 3.5 with the Broncos. Other spots, Kentucky 2.5. And then I think both of those numbers are key. Like, I really think it is one of those games where I would bet Kentucky at the 2.5, Santa Clara at the 3.5, because I do think it's going to be one possession. I more so like the Broncos in the game. I'm probably going to take a little money line as well. But yeah, I'm looking at Herb Sendek and Santa Clara. I'm just not a big fan of this Kentucky team.
Yeah.
All that NIL money they threw at that roster have disappointed, not as good defensively as a lot of us thought they would be. Just don't have a true point guard on that team either. Owe makes them go. Aberdeen's good at times. Colin Chandler's been Captain Clutch for them. But I've been impressed with Santa Clara this season. I think they win that game. So give me the Broncos. Start things off tomorrow.
I agree with you, PJ. I think Santa Clara wins this game as well. Herb Sendek now leading his 4th different program in his 32-year head coaching career to the NCAA Tournament. Not many head coaches have been able to accomplish such a feat. And one of the things I love about Santa Clara is their length. Their average height is 78.5 inches. Basically, they have the athleticism to stay with this Kentucky team. They are not great on the defensive glass, keeping their opposing team off the offensive boards, which is going to be critical here against Kentucky to eliminate those extra possessions for the Cats. But I really love what Santa Clara does on the offensive side of the floor. I think the Broncos stay in this game. I think the Broncos might win this game outright. Really love the start tomorrow for Santa Clara. It's an awesome first game on Friday. And it's PJ, it's one of the great feelings. We're going to go to bed tonight after all this wraps up, whenever it does, probably past midnight Eastern time. So technically on Friday, March 20th. And you'll get a couple of hours of sleep, and you'll be energized and juiced up once again to wake up on a Friday to do it once more. It is a great feeling when you're like, oh, man, that was such a fun day. Oh, I get to do the same exact thing over, replicate that day I just enjoyed so thoroughly right back away on a Friday into the weekend. I love the round of 64. The Thursday is my favorite, just the excitement and the hype that builds into it. But the Friday is right there, the greatest 2-day stretch on the sports calendar, no doubt.
100%. That game's going to be great. And then right after it, Ben, we get Texas Tech and Akron. I think the 5-12 game that people were most excited about, probably the most popular 12 upset. Toppin injury for Texas Tech, a big deal. Akron's a really good team. 2 teams that are really good offensively that want to shoot the 3-pointer. I don't have a bet in this game. Texas Tech is very much like Wisconsin, where they can beat anybody, but they can also lose to anybody, especially without the Toppin injury. And, it's just all going to be dependent on the 3-point shot. And if Akron's able to knock down some shots, I don't think I'll end up playing it. Maybe if I get a cheap money line price on Texas Tech, that's the way that I would look in the game. But it would, if I had to play it, I would lean towards Texas Tech. I think they would be the play. I think maybe a first half under in the game too. Early start like that, probably a lot of nerves, both teams who want to get up and down. And a lot of times like that, you do get some messy play early in the day. Like we saw it at TCU and Ohio State a little bit today. That would maybe be my look, would be a first half under. But I do think Texas Tech wins tomorrow. But certainly wouldn't shock me if Akron pulled the upset.
You know what's been really interesting, PJ, about those lower seeds with double digits next to their names, the 11s and the 12. Everybody looks at the 5-12 matchup, but the 11 seed, and it makes sense, it's a little bit tighter in terms of its distinction on a bracket and how far these teams are away from each other. The 11 seed entering this year's NCAA tournament has a better overall record, 62 outright wins versus 57 for the 5 seed combined. But we have already seen High Point get that win for a 12 seed, the 35th time in the 41 big dances since the tournament field expanded in 1985, that a 12 seed has a victory over a 5 seed. And a lot of those plucky 11 seeds, at least from the mid-major conferences, Texas and BYU are kind of a different story coming out of the first 4. But I think a lot of people, PJ, myself included, thought South Florida could pull off the upset against Louisville. Great game late. VCU trying to claw back into this one. Now an 11-point game against North Carolina as they had to burn a timeout trying to inbound the ball with some Rams pressure. But if those two 11 seeds go down, you start to look back at the 12 line. I love this Akron team. I love what the Zips have. I love Dron Gross every year. And again, It is a rarity, I think, in the Mid-American Conference to have veteran experience year over year. But names that have been there for a while in Akron, Ohio, Davari Johnson, Amani Lyle, Shema Scott, who hit that big shot for Akron with just a few minutes remaining in the MAC championship game to send the Zips back to the NCAA tournament for a third consecutive season. Without JT Toppin, I wonder how this Texas Tech team performs, because we saw them drop 3 straight now entering the NCAA tournament, where, like a Wisconsin team that you alluded to, very reliant on their backcourt, very reliant on both Christian Anderson and Donovan Atwell for what they are going to do. Now, you have great three-point shooters in both Atwell and Anderson and elsewhere around this Red Raiders side, and that is going to be important for Akron to try to eliminate that. And the Zips have to be good from 3 if they are going to pull off the upset. I'll lean with Akron plus 7.5, PJ, in my bracket. I have Akron making it to the Sweet 16. We'll see. There's been at least one double-digit seed in the last 17 consecutive NCAA tournaments to see the second weekend. If I had to look around right now outside of the 10 line, I'd probably look to High Point, but I want to see if Akron can pull off the same with a victory tomorrow against Texas Tech.
I love it. VCU is making a little bit of a run, by the way, Ben. They got it down to 11 with 7 minutes to go, but UNC just drilled another 3. Jaron Stevenson pushes it back out to 14, 70 to 56. Tar Heels lead with 7 minutes to go. So we get Texas Tech, Akron, Kentucky, Santa Clara to start the day. And then the next 3 games, Ben, all going to feature big spreads. Arizona takes on Long Island University as a 30.5-point favorite. UVA is going to be favored by 18.5 against Wright State. Iowa State going to be favored by 24.5 against Tennessee State. I think I'm going to take Nolan Smith and the Tigers of Tennessee State in that game, plus the points. Iowa State, I expect to win, but I was really impressed with Tennessee State and the MVC, what they were able to do in that conference tournament. They got good guards, and I don't think they're going to back down from Iowa State. That game is going to be in St. Louis, and, I think Tennessee State, I trust Nolan Smith, and I think that they're going to be able to keep them within that number. Virginia Wright State, no real thoughts there. I, again, think Virginia wins. I think they're a good survivor play if you want to use them as well, but I'm staying away from the spread. And Arizona, Long Island, I'm tempted to maybe lay the number with Arizona just because of what the 2-16s are doing today with Siena and then Howard, obviously giving Michigan a game, only trailing by 4 at halftime.
Yeah.
You wonder if people are like, oh, these 16 seeds can play, and these 1 seeds aren't maybe as good as we thought. I just feel like Michigan and Duke really haven't done a good job inserting their size. And the one thing I love about Arizona and Tommy Lloyd is they never lose themselves. They always play inside out. They always get Krivas involved. They get Kolopita's touches. Awaka comes in the game. And I think it's going to help Arizona, and it's going to help Tommy Lloyd. Like, did you guys see what those 16s did yesterday? Like, you don't want that to be you. You come out here and handle your business. And I've always felt, Ben, that the teams that win the national championship never mess around with the 16 seed when they're a 1. I always feel like the teams that win the title always come out, they cruise to a 20, 30, 40-point victory, and that's what I think Arizona is going to do. They're my champion. So I might lay it with them tomorrow. I'm going to take Tennessee State plus the points, but anything for you in those 3 games?
Yeah, I think first on Arizona, PJ, to your point, I don't think we're going to see every 16 seed give a 1 seed an absolute run. And I love LIU, and they are fast and they are athletic, which, again, if you're looking for a team to keep a game close, you have to do something different in a way to attack that 1 seed. I think there's a really interesting way of playing that game. Michael Calabrese, who was on the show that both you and I were a part of yesterday for VSiN, mentioned Arizona never to trail at plus 105. Now, we have seen, I don't know if Howard ever has had the lead against Michigan, but that's a close game. And, of course, Siena had a double-digit lead against Duke at the half. It is a very distinctive thing. You could have 1 bucket, 2-0, game's over, right? But if you believe in Arizona not taking these Sharks for granted and trying to keep the Finns up out of play, that could be a fun way of approaching it. I am on Wright State plus 18.5. I really like this team out of the Horizon League. I like what the Raiders do. They're fast offensively, they're efficient offensively, and they're really sound on the defensive end of the floor. I've watched a lot of Virginia basketball this year. I think Ryan Odom is a very talented coach. I'm not sure how you could argue that. And UVA really good defensively and quite balanced. I'm not so sure that I believe in the Who's in this game. I think Wright State keeps it close, not pulls off the outright upset, but covering as an 18.5-point dog, I do enjoy that. Quickly into the live action. 5:26 remaining in regulation, North Carolina and VCU. The Rams buried a 3. Terrence Hill Jr. is going nuclear. He's got 5 triples in this game, one of the bright spots for the Rams. They force a turnover, PJ, of North Carolina. Had a play in transition for Tyrell Ward, who just blew the layup. I think the ball got knocked as he was going up and kind of moved around in his hand, so he missed the layup. It could have made it a single-digit game. And here we're looking at a foul of Seth Trimble on Djokovic for VCU that I'm not entirely sure. You can't really call like an intentional. He hugged him a little bit, but I don't really necessarily think they're going to rule this a flagrant. It should be free throws if they give him the ability to go up, but we shall see. 70-59 right now, under 5.5 remaining. But again, VCU just hanging around enough, but it's really important, PJ. We talked about that 2.5-minute span right before the 8-minute mark that we were talking about in this game for them to make this a single-digit game, to try to get to 2 possessions, if at all possible, as a 2.5-point underdog. They haven't been able to do that. This is a critical possession with 5:26 left.
Yeah, it definitely is. And, Ben, there's just something about a college basketball game when you can cut it from that 11 to that 9 or 8 and just make it single digit. Like, it just feels different. You
want to get that feel, too, if you're backing an underdog. You just want to see it, right? I didn't think South Florida necessarily was going to come all the way back to beat Louisville, trailing by 22. But I will tell you, PJ, as we were watching that game, high point, the end of Ohio State TCU, and there's a turnover for VCU. Come on, boys. Like, you can't do that, right?
No, you can't.
Out of an offensive set, out of a timeout. They had a play, certainly, that Phil Martelli Jr. gave them. The 8th turnover tonight for VCU. North Carolina only has 4. You just want to feel it as a fan. And USF gave us a thrill. And you love the thrills when you are especially back in the underdog in a tournament that is called March Madness. VCU does get a stop. And, PJ, we've got a 2-point game, Michigan and Howard tonight in Buffalo in the first 30 seconds of the second half. VCU does get a bucket and a foul. Ooh.
So they can cut that game to 8. Isn't it just funny? You do a live stream, you figure the VCU game is going to be closed, Texas, and then now we're getting this Michigan game all of a sudden, which looks like it's going to be a good one down the stretch. So Howard down by 2 in Buffalo. And keep in mind, Ben, Michigan State played in Buffalo today. So all those fans that hung around for the night session, you definitely know who they're rooting for.
Sure.
Which is going to make that a fun final 19 minutes. Perez Johnson does get an and 1. So Michigan looking to push that lead to 5. VCU does hit their free throw to cut it to 8 with 4:48 left. We will keep you posted on that one. Then let's talk Bama Hofstra tomorrow, 11.5. Certainly a lot of interest in this game because of the unknown. We know Aiden Holloway's not going to play tomorrow for Alabama. And Hofstra's had a heck of a season. A lot of people feel like this is one of the best mid-major teams out there. Speedy Claxton, former college star, NBA player, has done a heck of a job. He's got the CAA Player of the Year, CAA Freshman of the Year. They got some really good guards. I will tell you as a Bama fan, since Nate Oates has been in Tuscaloosa, he is normally very good against the mid-majors. When his style of play, Ben, for these teams, it's tough to match the shooting, the athleticism, the speed, all those sorts of things. And even though you don't have Holloway, they still got Phylon, they still got Wrightsell, they still got Amari Allen. Last time Bama was one and done in the SEC tournament, they went to the Final Four. So I think losing that game to Ole Miss in Nashville and now Holloway, not playing, it could get this team refocused and some other guys to step up and realize they got to play a larger role. Because I'm a fan, I just can't lay that many points when I'm already stressing enough just for them to win the game. But if I were a neutral observer, I would probably lay it with the Tide if I had to, 11.5. I will say another interesting thing. Not often do you see a Bama game with the total below 160. So, maybe that tells you odds makers think maybe Hofstra can have some success and keep it close. And make it a lower scoring game, but I would lay it with the Tide if I had to.
Yeah, I am hoping that Hofstra keeps the game close, PJ. I think for what you alluded to, the athleticism, the pace, and the speed of which Alabama plays at, and the quantity of three-point shots that they want to take is not necessarily the style of the CAA or at the mid-major level in spots, right? That's a very large generalization for 31 different conferences and 365 D1 programs around this sport nationally. And that's what's tough to replicate when you see that from Alabama. But I really do wonder the absence of Aiden Holloway, not with the program right now, not on campus because of the arrest for marijuana earlier in the week. how that starts to rear its head for this Crimson Tide team. If you are backing Hofstra, if you think they keep this game close, heck, if you even think they might be capable of pulling off the outright upset, the two names you need to know are the two guys that PJ mentioned. Cruz Davis, the CAA Player of the Year, one of the best guards at the mid-major level you will see in this NCAA tournament, and Preston Edmeade, who is that outstanding CAA Freshman of the Year as well. And it's an old adage, PJ, but what wins in March? It's guard play. And when you have two great guards in that backcourt for Speedy Claxton and Hofstra, that's how the Pride stay in this game. So I'm hoping that it's close. I wonder if it will be. It's one of those games, again, where you're hoping around the 6-11, 5-12, 4-13 matchups that you get a really, really good game. I think Hofstra has enough offensive firepower to stay with Alabama, but those two guards and Cruz Davis and Preston Edmeade are going to have to be sensational tomorrow if they want to keep that game competitive.
By the way, Howard is 11 for 17 from three-point range. You got to wonder how many teams they would be like beating right now in the country if they were playing Michigan. I mean, of all the other 63 teams in the field, they might be leading like 58 of them if they weren't playing the Wolverines. So an incredible shooting display.
Crazy.
And again, they just will not go away. They're at the foul line right now. Cut it to a 6-point game, 58-52, 17-40 to go in the game. St. Mary's A&M getting ready to start the second half there. A&M up by 11. Texas and BYU also getting ready to start the second half with the Longhorns up by 9 in that game. And then, of course, we got VCU, North Carolina, final 4.5 minutes. Tar Heels up by 8 in that game.
I see 5-point game, my friend, in VCU UNC. A foul on Henry Vasar, a really bad flat foul on a bad closeout baseline, and Michael Bell for VCU kind of went continuation, jammed it in, hit the free throw, 70-65, over 4 minutes remaining. A timeout on the floor, I believe, for a review. I think Phil Martelli Jr. used the challenge. I'm not entirely sure. I wasn't looking necessarily at that. But on the ensuing inbound for North Carolina, almost looked like it went off UNC. I think they're looking at that right now. So again, this was the spot, right? Could VCU get to a 2-possession game? They're on a 9-0 run in the last 2 minutes that has made it a 5-point game. This is what we love, PJ. And if we get to a point during this live stream where this game is coming down to its conclusion, let's stop looking at the live odds and the box score. And you and I got to sync up to see what we can have here from a really good live reaction standpoint. That should be VCU basketball. And it is. All right.
Oh my God, Ben, they just drilled like a 25-footer to cut it to 2. So the Tar Heels are up 70-68 with 4 minutes to go.
Terrence Hill Jr., brother.
12-0 run in the last 2.5 minutes. We got 3:40 to go in the game. I was talking about how Michigan's playing in Buffalo with the Michigan State fans there. Well, North Carolina's playing in Greenville with the Duke fans there. So, not only are the VCU fans loving this, the Duke fans are as well. Seth Trimble with a big bucket there to push it back out to 4. So 72-68 North Carolina on top with 3:18 to go. But again, a lot of people sweating this out because the 2.5 is more than alive for the Rams to try and cover this number in the 6-11. And man, VCU is just coming alive in this game. Another bucket there. Terrence Hill Jr., you were talking about another layup. So 72-70, 3 minutes to go. Hill's got 16 in the second half, 27 for the game. BYU Texas also starting the second half as well. Could be AJ DeBance's final college basketball game with the Cougars, as he's likely off to the NBA draft in the summer. And North Carolina, Ben, answers again. Vasar's got 25 for the Heels. They're back up by 4.
PJ, it's a really interesting point for North Carolina, who without Caleb Wilson, of course, who has missed 8 games now. I've made the point that in their final 10 games of the year, via CBB analytics, they had a net rating of -0.8. Best teams in the country, net ratings of +25 to +30. So -0.8 at a 10-game sample size, 8 of which without their stud in Caleb Wilson, not a great sign. But when you have Seth Trimble, who has 12, 6, and 5 in this game, and Henry Vasar, who is a really good big, has 25 and has hit 3 threes. That's how UNC, I should say, continues to stay in everything they need to do in the NCAA tournament. Really good sign there at the under 4-minute media timeout, I believe, between VCU and North Carolina. Again, Howard staying in this game. PJ, how do you feel right now, Have you been able to see a lot of what St. Mary's has been doing against A&M? Again, it's not necessarily like buckyball is just completely confusing Randy Bennett and company, but it's now a 14-point lead, 40-26. And teams like St. Mary's, not necessarily built to play from a deficit and to come back from such a large hole, down by 14. A lot of basketball left, but they really got to slow down A&M, who I think just poured in another bucket. How do you feel about St. Mary's at all right now with what you're seeing from the Gales?
Yeah, I mean, A&M just shooting the ball really well from 3-point range. So that's the big concern. But like you said, Ben, it's, a team that wants to play slow, wants to play with the lead, that's trailing by 14, trying to climb their way back. So I do think St. Mary's is going to make a run, but you just have to wonder if maybe it's just too big a hole to climb, as A&M's now up by 16, man. So this thing is getting ugly. It looks like my St. Mary's futures are on the rope. This is not good. I thought A&M and buckyball could give them some issues. But man, I just like the way that they're shooting the 3-pointer is making it really tough on these St. Mary's guards. So down by 16, Randy Bennett does call timeout. We'll see if they got a run in them. Texas still up by 8 on BYU as well. And then we got 2 minutes and 14 seconds as North Carolina up by 4 on VCU.
Coming back from the break, PJ, I went over to the NCAA March Madness Live, so I think we are pretty synced up right now in terms of what we're watching between UNC and VCU. You see about 2:10 remaining?
Yeah, 2:10
now
remaining.
2:08 ticking down. All right.
Yep.
So we're in a pretty good spot here where I want us to be synced up, because if this game is going to provide madness, we want those live and genuine reactions. And for me, who is on great cut by Henry Vasar. Looked like it was nearly a clean rejection at the rim. Foul called, 1:59 left. Vasar going to go to the line for 2. Oh, man. Terrence Hill Jr. almost had him, but that's a lot of hands. So I think that is the right call. Foul right there on VCU.
Yep, Vasar to the line for 2. Oh, and the first one spins out. So it remains a 4-point game.
All right, PJ. All right. That's going to keep us in 2 possession. It was going to be 2 possession regardless, but you want to be 2 possession where it's a bucket and a 3, not necessarily 2 threes. Vasar 62% on the year, does make the second. So 75-70, a minute 59 remains. VCU trails by 5. And the man that has the basketball right now for Phil Martelli Jr.'s club, Terrence Hill Jr., has been going berserk in this game. They are going to trust him to get a bucket. He got a decent look on a step back, unable to convert. So VCU needs to get a couple of stops here for us to have some life. Again, Rams plus 2.5. Just stay within the number if we're not going to get the outright upset that we want from the 11 seed of the champions out of the A-10.
Oof. Yep. Texas up by 6. Still 18 minutes to go in that game. North Carolina 3-point shot. No good. VCU with the rebound. A minute 20 to go. They have a chance to cut this back down to 1 possession.
Djokovic.
So let's see. Yeah. And Martelli is going to call timeout.
All
so
right.
Tar Heels up by 5 with a minute 15 to go. BYU, meanwhile, just cut the deficit to 4 as Sean Miller will call timeout. Real quick, Ben, we'll sneak in one more game as we have some of these games of commercial break. Utah State and Villanova, 8-9 matchup tomorrow in San Diego. I think everybody knows at this point kind of the story with the Mountain West when you get to the tournament. Usually a good idea to fade that conference. The Aggies are 1.5-point favorite tomorrow. Kevin Willard's done a really good job with Villanova this year. I just don't think Nova's all that great. I'm probably going to end up betting Utah State. It does scare me, the track record for the Mountain West, but I think they're the better team, and I'm not high on Villanova. So I'll lean towards Utah State money line in that game. Any thoughts for you?
Going to be really critical for Jared Calhoun and his Aggies from Utah State to run Villanova off the 3-point line. The Cats want to shoot the 3, and they do so at a pretty high clip. Can Utah State, who is brilliant on the offensive side of the floor, do that defensively? Nearly 41% of opponent field goal attempts against Utah State this year from 3. So on paper, PJ, there will be those opportunities for Nova to hit from deep. If they do, that's where I think Utah State can struggle just a little bit. I'm not in love with this Villanova side by any means. And so I think Utah State in basically a pick 'em wins. It's how I've picked my bracket. It's one of those games, much like I felt for Ohio State and TCU today. It's how I feel for Miami and Mizzou tomorrow. I don't have a great feel for it. It's going to be a game that I watch and enjoy. And ultimately, that's the Midwest region, right? That's the 8-9 for Michigan.
No. For Arizona,
Florida,
West region.
for Arizona, right? And Arizona, both of our national champs, I don't think has a great shot. Let's get back to Greenville, South Carolina, should we? Terrence Hill Jr. got a bucket. They are down by just 3, but Jaron Stevenson, a really good look from 3, didn't get it. Rebound for VCU, and
he gets
fouled.
So 1-1.
We're going to have a 1-1. That's huge. PJ, I was going to make this point a while ago as we were talking about could the Rams start to, hoist this comeback and get things turned around a little bit. At that time, UNC picked up a really cheap foul, I think on an off-ball screen, but that was just their 3rd team foul with about 8 minutes left. They are now in the bonus, that being VCU, the 1-1. So you got to make the first to earn the second, of course. But if you make the first, we are talking about just a 2-point game. Can we get it here out of Lewis for VCU?
Some big free throws for the money line, the spread, all that. St. Mary's and A&M also back from the timeouts. Let's see if the Gales got a run in them. Down by 16 with 18 minutes to go, and they miss a layup. So Aggies might be blowing that thing open. But VCU 1-1. Try and cut this to a 2-point game.
Got to have the first, and he does.
Yep, he does. Knocks down the first one.
We're getting a battle down there from Lazar Djokovic and Henry Vasar, where they just both tumble to the ground. Ooh, that's a bad play by Seth Trimble. He wasn't even really contesting for that rebound. Just stay out of there. Couple of really interesting fouls and some dumb plays for North Carolina at the end. A lot of turnovers in the last 5 minutes or so of this game when they had 1 turnover in the opening half against VCU. So Nick Lewis did make the first. Can he make the second with 31 ticks remaining in regulation to make this a 1-point game in Greenville? He does not. He misses. And now Phil Martelli, they fouled in the backcourt?
Yeah, they did foul. I would have probably tried for a trap, see if you could have gotten a steal. Obviously, you had to foul because the shot clock would have.
Shot clock was.
But yeah, I would have tried to give it a little bit more time, see if you can get a steal. Obviously, Martelli decided to foul right away, trying to extend the game. So big free throws here.
Big free throws.
For Seth Trimble, 1-1 with North Carolina up by 2. And he is a 67% free throw shooter. Do we know what the total was in this game too? Could we have a bad beat on the total? Because I do not know what that
let me try to get it. Seth Trimble missed it. Ooh. Oh, I think that went out on Lazar Djokovic.
Yeah, I do.
No chance.
I do.
Oh man, that hung on the rim for just an additional second there. And because of it, I think Lazar Djokovic wasn't able to secure, so it goes out on VCU. Trying to find this total real quick, PJ, if I can.
150. It was 150
and a half. So we're right in that territory.
We are. We're 140. We're 148. So pretty crazy.
Wait, they ruled that out on North Carolina?
Did they?
Oh, that
would be fantastic for you. No, they said.
Because I was going to say that's very clearly off.
However, so now that puts the shot clock at 20 with 28.6 on the game clock. So
interesting.
5-second call, Ben. 5-second call.
I got to refresh. We're behind. Get there, Ben. Get there, March Madness.
5-second call.
Oh my
God.
So
they got a shot to hold for 1.
How many?
They got a shot to hold for 1.
One timeout for VCU. One timeout for North Carolina. I am seeing a Home Depot commercial with Shaq on my screen as well. PJ, I was just hoping for one moment that we could react live together as we get close to 15 seconds here. VCU and UNC. The Heels up by 2. There's Terrence Hill Jr. drives to the cup with 11 seconds remaining and ties the game at 75 apiece. North Carolina looks like Hubert Davis running down the sideline to call a timeout. Terrence Hill Jr. delivers for the Rams. He is having an out-of-body experience in the round of 64, and he has tied the game at 75 all with 8.1 seconds remaining. PJ, when we started this VCU team was down 11 at the half.
Yeah.
They weren't necessarily all that close in the opening 10, 12 minutes of this second half. North Carolina, I believe, led 64-49. I'm not sure if that was the peak here in the second half of what the largest lead was for UNC. Their biggest lead in this game was 19, as the graphic is showing right now. What a fight back by this VCU team with 8.1 seconds remaining. They have 1 timeout remaining. North Carolina tied at 75 all. No timeouts, but in the double bonus, it should be noted.
And look, I mean, Ben, you're going to hear a bunch of people talk about this, but I think if we've seen a trend from the Ohio State game, from the Louisville game, from this game, no lead is safe in the
No.
NCAA tournament. No lead is safe. And I'm hoping no lead's safe for Texas A&M and St. Mary's can find some of this comeback magic. But yeah, tie game, 8 seconds left. And everybody like you who's holding a VCU ticket is saying, if North Carolina wins, just let it be a 2.
Right.
Please. Just let it be a 2. But an awesome game. Could get our first overtime game of the tournament. 8 seconds left. You would think it's got to be a play to Vasar. You would think Trimble coming down the court. They called the timeout in the front court, so they got it on the side. You would think it's got to be a play for Vasar. They haven't been able to stop him, and there he goes with 7 seconds. 5, 4.
That ball's loose.
Oh, that is VCU ball.
2.4 seconds remaining. A turnover for North Carolina right now. Ruled VCU's ball on the floor. Of course, it is college basketball in the year 2026. This is going to be reviewed, I would suspect. But Phil Martelli Jr. and the Rams just burning their last time out. Let's see here, PJ. Very much off of Henry Vasar. This is VCU basketball with a little bit less than 3 seconds left in regulation to pull off an absolute stunner, trailing by as many as 19 points, down by about 15 with 8 minutes remaining. They have fought all the way back to tie this game at 75 apiece and are going to have a shot in regulation in Greenville to win this thing outright in advance with an ever so slight upset in the round of 64 over the 6 seed North Carolina.
Michigan's starting to pull away just a little bit, Ben. Now up to a 13-point game, 72-59 with 13 minutes to go. So, again, with the way that Howard was shooting, what was kind of unfortunate with the Bison is that Michigan was also shooting the ball really well. For them to put up 43 points on that defense in the first half, I mean, that's a hell of a job. But Michigan with 50 points, and now Lendenborg going to the line, trying to make it a 15-point game with 13 minutes to go, as the Wolverines looking to move on to round 2. Again, A&M, they've been in control pretty much of this thing the entire way, never trailed, up by 15 right now with still about 15 minutes to go in the game. And Texas, who's pretty much been on top of BYU the whole night, they're up by 6 as well. So we got 3 other games going on, but all eyes right now on UNC, VCU, as we've already had. I mean, we had TCU hit a shot with less than 5 seconds left. We had High Point hit a shot with less than 15 seconds left. Maybe we'll get our first true buzzer beater of this NCAA tournament right here with VCU, as Ben is certainly hoping so, as somebody that took them plus 2.5. I do have VCU on my bracket, so I would very much enjoy this game winner as well. And let's see what they draw up.
Oh, my God.
Steele.
They turned
Trimble
it over.
has
Seth
a chance
for the win. My goodness.
It's too strong.
That's not what we wanted to see. They were in a weird spot because of where that ball went out of bounds off Henry Vasar, that they were behind the half-court line, not in the front court. So the timeout and the inbounds pass was picked by Seth Trimble, who had a look at it, and that would have been off. It very much would have counted had it gone in. Of course, Seth Trimble hit the shot of the year for North Carolina in the upset in the Dean Dome over Duke. But we are going to go to overtime for the first time in the 2026 men's NCAA tournament, PJ. Tied at 75 all. And I really, really wonder about that plus 2.5 point spread that I have with VCU here in OT. But they were brilliant in the final 6 minutes of regulation to even get the extra 5. I would have loved to see Terrence Hill Jr. have an opportunity. I'll just say this. You mentioned TCU, Ohio State. First game in the round of 64. Xavier Edmonds hit the bunny with about 5 seconds remaining. That was the game winner for TCU. Bill Raftery is part of the crew that is calling these games in Greenville this weekend. The top team for CBS, Ian Eagle, Grant Hill, Bill Raftery, Tracy Wilson. I don't think that Xavier Edmonds was far enough away from the cup for it to register as a true onions call. But that would have been onions, regardless of the ending result for Bill Raftery, had Seth Trimble made it or had VCU had a better inbounds play and was able to get a shot off.
I mean, unbelievable. Ben, I'm glad we pushed this live stream, my friend. We get ourselves some bonus basketball. Looks like BYU and Texas is going to be a lot of fun. St. Mary's, I think they are just absolutely cooked. They are completely unraveling and melting. So that's St. Mary's Final Four ticket. We can toss that in the trash can. That does not look like it's going to be happening. Again, top free throw shooting team in the country, top 15 3-point shooting team, top rebounding team, all these sorts of things, but they just have not seen an animal like A&M with the pressing. And I thought with how well coached they are, limiting their turnovers, they were going to be okay. but clearly that has not been the case. Michigan, meanwhile, up by 18 now over Howard. So you took the Bison plus 30. You were feeling good when they were down by 4 at half, but all of a sudden, now it's an 18-point game with 12 minutes to go as Howard just keeps draining in threes, pushes it back to a 15-point game. Ben, tomorrow we have Miami of Ohio back in action once again against Tennessee. People will certainly be glued into that game, seeing if the Red Hawks can do it again. Going up against Rick Barnes in Tennessee, who's no stranger certainly to some big upsets. Vols are favored by 11.5, total 149.5. Yeah. I was always in the mindset of betting Miami against SMU then fading them against Tennessee. And I think I'm still in that mindset. I thought, a lot of people were going to look to fade Miami when they got in the tournament because bunch of people didn't think they deserved to be in. Their metrics weren't that of a tournament at large, blah, blah, blah. But then, they get their win, and now all of a sudden people start to doubt themselves, right? And I think this is where you get the value on Tennessee, who is just so physical. You got Gillespie and Ament in the backcourt. We know Miami, Ohio is going to jack a lot of threes, but you know what? For Tennessee, I've watched Rick Barnes' teams play Nate Oates in Alabama really tough a lot of times. Nate Oates and Bama have never scored more than 80 on Tennessee. So the Vols know what they're up against tomorrow. They know what they have to do. And I think they win and cover. So I would look at the Vols tomorrow.
Yeah, my heart, PJ, wants Miami to continue to do what they did last night. 64 field goal tries, 41 from beyond the arc. And if you are looking for Miami, because that's not necessarily the most sustainable model, but I think they understand what they have to do when booked as the underdog to find something in an uptick. Their best player and an all-MAC first-team performer in Peter Suter, who is their leading scorer, was not the guy last night. It was Ian Elmer. It was Luke Skaljack. It was Brant Byers. Peter Suter wasn't necessarily contributing to the scoring output in the way that he has all year for the Red Hawks. I really want Miami University to stay in this game. I really want them to keep it close. And PJ, they're going to have to be great from beyond the arc. Tennessee allows the three-point shot. But as we well know, when you are constructed with defense first, oftentimes allowing a three or shooting a ton of threes against a good defense is not like, ooh, we are wide open. Ooh, this is a crystal clean look. It is because everything else to do on the offensive end is so difficult. You have to hoist up a three near the end of the shot clock. I think one thing that SMU did not provide for the Hawks at all last night, again, loved the matchup against SMU because they were porous on the defensive end of the floor. It fit Miami's style. One thing Miami is going to have to be brilliant in tomorrow is defending the offensive glass because Tennessee is the second best offensive rebounding team in the country, and they have that size with Nate Ament, the freshman, with Felix Okpara. It's going to be a little bit difficult for Miami to keep it close. They will need another Herculean effort with like 45 threes and 22 of them going down, I think, to see the round of 32.
Yeah, I obviously will be rooting for Miami just because of the story, but my head is going with Tennessee. My heart is with Miami of Ohio, but I'll rock with the Vols. We also have an 8-9 matchup between Clemson and Iowa. Should be a good one. Ben, I think, again, though, the way that the ACC has looked is kind of concerning. And I'm a big fan of that combo with Sturtz and McCollum. When you got a head coach that good and a point guard that good, that can win you games in March. I would go with the Hawkeyes. You love seeing a total at 128.5. That is going to be a slugfest.
Yes.
But yeah, I would take Iowa on the money line because it's such a low total. Probably going to be a close game that comes down to the wire. But I think I'll be on the Hawkeyes in that game tomorrow.
I'll be on the Hawks as well. PJ, you mentioned how low the total is, 128 and a hook. It opened at 131.5. When we were doing the selection show, it felt like that game was going to be points at a premium, first to 60 wins, and it's only working its way down from there. Two very slow teams. Iowa is the 8th slowest team in college basketball. Clemson is 333 of 365 in terms of pace. I think the biggest dignifying fact for Iowa is they are 31st in offensive efficiency. Clemson is 71st. The Hawkeyes have not been good in their final 2.5-3 weeks of this season. Final 10 games of the year, shooting just 31% from three. Their offensive rating is taking a plummet. They need to find that offensive spark once again. They've got some talented playmakers led by the point guard in Bennett Sturtz. They have to be really good offensively. I give them the slight edge because of that being a very similar style of those two. I give Iowa the edge offensively. I think Iowa gets the job done. I don't think either of those two teams present much of a challenge to Florida in that second round come Sunday.
Yeah, I'm with you. So an update on overtime. We had a long review in that VCU and Carolina game. So only 30 seconds gone by. We're still tied at 75. Howard's making a little bit of a run. Got it down from 18 to 13, 77-64. St. Mary's also trying to climb their way back a little bit, down by 16 with 12 minutes to play. Texas, meanwhile, has stretched their lead out to 12, 63-51. Over BYU. So those are the live games that we currently have going on right now. We'll obviously keep posted on North Carolina and VCU, and that game comes down to the wire there in the final couple moments. But St. Mary's has got like 18 turnovers. You know, that's always the fear when you go up against the press and buckyball, but I did not see that coming. I thought they would take much better care of the basketball, and they just simply have not. So A&M for another 3. Nope, no good. But yeah, so I think a game that a lot of people are interested in tomorrow, because it's going to have a similar feel to it, Ben, is that St. John's Northern Iowa game. Northern Iowa, very much like St. Mary's, where they want to play slow, rely on their defense, want to play games in the 60s, going up against that St. John's ball pressure, who's going to want a full court press. So after seeing a game like this, and clearly St. Mary's out of rhythm, does that make you want to lay it with Pitino and the Johnnies tomorrow? Do you like Northern Iowa? What are your thoughts on that game?
I like Northern Iowa, PJ. I took them with 10.5. I think they might be able to pull off an outright upset. Part of that, you know, as we do this, it's like bracket versus bet is a very different thing. In my bracket, if they lose in the first round to a good St. John's team, whatever. If I really believe that Northern Iowa can win outright, to put money down specifically on that is a very different story. The reason I like the Panthers to keep this game close is because of how slow they are on the offensive side and defensive side of the floor. Third slowest team in the country, but they are really good defensively. They make shooting the 3 against them incredibly difficult, and just setting up anything offensively you want to do very tough against Ben Jacobson and his Panthers. He has led Northern Iowa now to 5 NCAA tournaments. They have won a game in their previous 3 trips. Going to be easier said than done against the Red Storm team that we saw put on full display what they can do defensively, I thought, in that Big East tournament title. Again, I think the issue with UNI is potentially the size against guys like Zuby Ejiofor and Bryce Hopkins for this Johnny's team down low. But if they can rebound well and they play that slow with points and possessions being absolutely paramount, I think Northern Iowa might be able to keep this a game and at least give us a really good run tomorrow night against St. John's. By the way, in overtime right now, we're nearly approaching the 2-minute mark. Neither team between VCU and North Carolina has scored. A lot of ugly basketball, and as I say that, Michael Bell, or was that Nick Lewis, changes it. Regardless, VCU has now taken a 2-point lead. A foul of Seth Trimble on the other end with 2:02 remaining. He'll have a chance to tie it at the line.
Yeah, and then Carolina back the other way. Yup, so 2:02 to go in that game. Michigan back up by 16 with 9 minutes to go against Howard. Texas, I mean, just on a rampage, 17-point lead over BYU. So luckily we got this VCU-UNC game to keep us company, Ben, because it looks like the other 3 not going to be coming down to the wire, but we do have OT in Greenville between the Tar Heels and VCU. While Trimble's at the foul line, we'll talk about the next game, UCF and UCLA. I like the Bruins in this game, Ben. I think you can make an argument that maybe UCF is the worst team in the field. They really struggled down the stretch in Big 12 play, and they just don't have a good defense. I love Famous Folks. I like Riley Kugel. They do have good athletes. But, you know, just going up against UCLA, it feels like something is clicked for Mick Cronin and that team. I think Donovan Dent had to get used to that style a little bit and playing with all those returners for UCLA. But these last couple months, you know, with the win over Purdue, the win over Illinois, beating Michigan State in Chicago, it just feels like this is the closest team that Cronin has had since those teams with Juzang and Jaquez and those kind of guys. So I like UCLA tomorrow. I'd put them in moneyline parlays. I'd lay the 5.5. I'm on the Bruins.
I agree. I think the Bruins win this game, PJ, and I think they give Connecticut a run in the round of 32 as well. One thing I will highlight about this UCLA team as compared to the 3 Sweet 16 teams in the last 5 years under Mick Cronin, not nearly as good defensively. They will enter the big dance 53rd in defensive efficiency. When they made the Sweet 16 a couple of years ago in 2023, second most efficient defense. The year prior to that, the 16th most efficient defense. The worst in that 3-year consecutive run was the magical first four to Final Four run when they were 46th in defensive efficiency. When you think of Mick Cronin, you think of grinded out style defense. It's not necessarily been their calling card. They're better offensively. Donovan Dent orchestrating the show. Of course, the calf injury that kept him out of the second half against Purdue in the Big Ten tournament semifinal. Tyler Bilodeau, who got injured the night prior against Michigan State. He's expected to be back tomorrow night in Philadelphia against UCF, who I think is going to struggle against that UCLA offense. We know that Johnny Dawkins and his team want to get up and down the floor. UCLA, a slower team. I like the Bruins in that spot to win in the round of 64. And if they can up that defensive intensity against Connecticut on Sunday, maybe put a scare into Dan Hurley's Huskies.
Yeah, maybe they could. Tied up at 77, 50 seconds to go. VCU and UNC taking a timeout. So yeah, we'll keep it here.
Ugly offense here, PJ. We're
getting live updates. Yeah,
nobody's
getting
offense. Anything. I think there's a couple of tired bunches on both sides for both of these teams right now that are just absolutely gassed. 50.3 remaining. North Carolina has the basketball. 23 ticks left on the shot clock as well.
St. Mary's getting smoked. They're down 19. Looks like A&M is going to advance there and get most likely Houston, who's going to play Idaho. After that, Texas also up 13 against BYU. So the Cougars running out of time, 68-55 with 9:20 to go in that game. Michigan and Howard have a TV timeout. Wolverines up by 20. So if you did take Howard plus the points, you still should be in a good spot. It feels like Dusty made Michigan probably going to take the air out of the ball a little bit, try and grind up some possessions, up 20. But a hell of a fight from Howard. And it really makes you wonder if Michigan had an off-shooting first half, what that game could have been. It was 50-43 at halftime. But the shooting for Howard slowed down just a bit here in the second half. Real quick, Ben, Purdue and Queens tomorrow. Boilermakers 25.5 point favorite. Any thoughts there for you?
Queens is really fun offensively. Grant Leonard and his team into the big dance for the first time, only their fourth year as a D1 program. Chris Ashby, an absolute bucket, kind of reminds you a little bit of what Chase Johnston was doing today for High Point. They can score. They are not good defensively, and Purdue has not been great defensively this year. But Purdue is now the most efficient offense we have ever seen in the nearly 30-year history of the Ken Pom era. 131.6 is the adjusted offensive efficiency number for Purdue. Now the best in the country, surpassing Illinois in the best ever mark we have seen pre-NCAA tournament, again, in the 30 years of Ken Pom since the 1996-97 season. So can Queens do enough defensively to stay within striking distance? That's where I worry for this team. If Purdue plays like they did, PJ, in the 4-day run in Chicago in the Big Ten tournament, there's a really good chance the Boilers can come out of the West region or at least give Arizona a run for its money in a potential regional final to get to Indianapolis for a Final Four appearance. I'm still a little bit cautious that we are going to see the Purdue team that we saw in the Big Ten tournament carry over all throughout the Big Dance. But I guess we'll see. I bet Purdue at 13-1 last April of 2025, when they had all the returning talent of Braden Smith, Krakoff, and Ren Fletcher Lawyer, and the additions of Oscar Clough, Omer Meyer, to name a few, that I felt pretty confident the preseason #1 team and national championship favorites would be in this spot. I don't feel necessarily as confident as I did nearly a year ago as I do now. But we'll see. Going to be a fun offensive game, I think, between the Boilermakers and the Royals of Queens University, which is a great nickname for a team that is known as Queens.
No doubt. Seth Trimble, Ben, goes 1 for 2 from the line. 78-77. 5-second different shot clock, game clock, 30 on the game clock, 25 shot clock. So we'll see how VCU plays this. You think they'd waste some time, but certainly want to give yourself an opportunity for either an offensive rebound or
he did it again.
Did he? Oh, he
did it again. Terrence Hill Jr. calls his own number, a step back straightaway three, has VCU ahead by 2, 80-78 with just over 10 seconds remaining. But North Carolina on the opposite end of the floor gets it down to Henry Vasar. Neither team has a timeout.
What a game. Goodness.
And I think UNC is going to have Vasar at the line for 2 freebies. as Lazar Djokovic was just all over him. Yet 2 freebies for UNC to tie this game. Henry Vasar at the stripe for North Carolina with 3.8 remaining. But correct me if I'm wrong, PJ. I think Terrence Hill Jr. for VCU has 34 points in this opening round game against the Heels.
He's got a lot. It's somewhere in that range.
Vasar missed the first.
Wow.
Vasar missed the first.
I think he's got to miss this one. There's only 4.2 seconds left. I think he's got to miss this one.
Both teams in the double bonus. Or actually, no, not the double bonus yet for VCU. Still the 1-1. 2 more fouls needed from North Carolina to put VCU in the double bonus. They only have 8 as a team. It rolls over into overtime. But 4.2 seconds remaining. Henry Vasar, the center for UNC, missed the first of 2 free throws. Now the second. No timeouts for either team. He does miss the second. Oh, I think they called that off as a lane violation. I think Vasar went too fast. VCU has the basketball with 4.2 seconds remaining, up by 2, 80-78. They were down by 19, PJ, with about 13 minutes remaining in regulation. VCU was down by 19 in the second half, and it looks as though, courtesy of Terrence Hill Jr. and a magical performance of 34 points, is in line to pull off the upset here in the round of 64 in Greenville.
That's unbelievable. Ben, I mean, do we think Hubert Davis is coach's last game for North Carolina?
Ooh. I don't think they're going to axe him in this spot, given the fact that Caleb Wilson was out for 8 games to end the year and here in the opening round, of course, in the NCAA tournament. But 2026-27 becomes ever important, I would think, for Hubert Davis and what he can return for North Carolina. Yes.
Yeah. That is a bad loss. I agree. I think that the Caleb Wilson injury will give him a pass, but I think next year he's probably going to have to make at least the second weekend for North Carolina. There's still 3.7 left, but VCU knocks down both free throws. They will advance to take on the winner of Illinois and Penn. And if you had South Florida plus 5.5 today and VCU plus 2.5, I don't know if you're betting the rest of the night. I think you take those wins and you run far. So let's see if VCU can ice this thing. 3.7 left. First free throw is good to make it a 3-point game. By the way, Michigan's up 28 right now. Yeah. I mean, they have just gone on one of those Michigan-esque runs. So they might cover that spread of 30 after being up by 4 at halftime. A&M still up 15 with 8 minutes to go. Texas is also up double digits with 8 minutes to go. Both free throws are good for VCU as they have an 82-78 lead. Carolina chucks it down the floor. Vasar puts it up. No good. What a win for the Rams. What a win for Ben Stevens and anybody else who had VCU plus the points or took the Rams on their bracket. And again, I agree. I think Hubert Davis will remain the head coach of North Carolina, but man, is that a tough loss. I mean, that is tough. When you're up 19 like that, that is pretty brutal.
Let's see, PJ, where this ranks. If I can do some quick research on the fly, a 19-point second half deficit for VCU. Again, and this wasn't like 19 because UNC was up by 16 as the second half started and then got a quick bucket. They were down by 19. We've seen some bigger ones than that, but this is going to be one of the all-time comeback victories that you will see. Down by 19 with just over 13 minutes remaining, and VCU battles all the way back to win over North Carolina in Greenville, South Carolina. What a victory for Phil Martelli Jr. and his Rams in his first year in Richmond. Leads them to an A-10 co-regular season crown, a tournament title, a spot in the big dance, and a victory over North Carolina. In-state rival, by the way, a victory over North Carolina in the round of 64. That was absolutely awesome.
Unbelievable. 82-78. The over cashes as well. So the other 3 games we have in this window, Texas up by 11 with 7 minutes to go. Michigan up by 28 with 5 minutes to go. And St. Mary's making a little bit of a run. They cut it to 12 actually, and then A&M answer with the 3 to push it back up to 15, but they did just get an and 1, so they'll take a timeout, looking to cut it back down to 12. I did take the Gales plus 7.5, so it'd be really cool if they covered that number. That'd be much appreciated. 4 more games left to preview on tomorrow's slate. Then Florida takes on Prairie View as a 35.5 point favorite. UConn takes on Furman as a 20.5-point favorite. And then we got Kansas against Cal Baptist laying 13.5, and Miami and Missouri with the Canes, a 2.5-point favorite. That game is in St. Louis, though.
Yeah.
So the crowd you saw for Nebraska today in OKC, you'll probably see something similar for Missouri tomorrow. That should be a fun game. I'm considering taking Furman. Florida and Prairie View is a pass for me. I have no thoughts on that game.
Yeah.
Furman, they got size, Ben. They're one of the tallest. They're the 5th tallest team in college basketball. I'm a big fan of Bob Ritchie as a head coach. I think they can hang around and cover that number. The fear, obviously, is that Mr. March, Dan Hurley's 14-0 against the spread in tournament games in his last 14. That scares you for sure. But I'm leaning towards Furman. No thoughts on Kansas and Cal Baptist. I really haven't watched too much of Cal Baptist, so I don't want to bet on them or fade them. Kansas is a team that's very Jekyll and Hyde. They're very much like a Wisconsin type. And then I do like Miami a lot on the money line. Missouri for me is similar to a UCF in the sense that they just have no defense. They're just all offense, no defense. So I usually like fading teams like that in the tournament. I'm a big fan of what Jay Lucas and Miami have done in his first season. So Canes for me, money line, Furman plus the points. My 2 bets in that late night action, but anything for you in those games?
I really want to be with you, PJ, when it comes to Miami. I do wonder about what that atmosphere is going to be like tomorrow night in downtown St. Louis inside the Enterprise Center for Mizzou. What a gift it is to be a 10 seed in a region and basically get to play a home game in the NCAA tournament. I think Jay Lucas and Miami, a better team. I like Trey Donaldson. I like Malik Renew. I like what this team has in terms of what they do, both in how they are constructed and how they play. But again, that atmosphere might be worth a few points and what we expect to be a tight game. Missouri's got 7 wins against fellow teams in the NCAA tournament field, including 2 in non-conference play. A lot of that is from the SEC. We'll see. Mizzou does have a win over Florida, I believe. No, Auburn beat Florida in Gainesville. Mizzou beat them at home. But again, it's just an interesting spot for the Tigers in this game against the Hurricanes. I would say this about one of my favorite bets late tomorrow when you look at all that we have in that late window. It was a game that you alluded to that I think can be really, really interesting late night. What does Kansas look like defensively? Kansas has been a top 10 defense all year, PJ, with or without Darren Peterson in the lineup. Against Cal Baptist in their first NCAA tournament appearance. And if you didn't watch the end of the WAC championship game, the final ever WAC tournament title game, to see what Dom Daniels does, one of the star point guards in this tournament, one of the star guards for CBU this year. He's a bucket getter. Could there be enough offense for CBU to stay in this game? That's really what I think about. But Kansas is a really good defensive team. Total 137.5. I think it'll be rather interesting.
I think it will be too. So that's the entire Friday slate that we have for tomorrow. Texas up by 8 right now on BYU with 5 minutes to go as the Cougars looking to make a run. A&M up by 13 on St. Mary's with 7 minutes to go as well. So maybe we have some more drama down the stretch of these 2 games. That VCU North Carolina game, though, was a ton of fun to sweat out. Great win by you, Ben. Getting that cover home, getting that win for VCU. As again, the 11s have had a ton of success recently against the 6 in these tournaments, and we get our first 11 over 6 win in this NCAA tournament. We will be back probably at some point next week doing another one of these live streams here on GameDay Garage, the quad. For Ben Stevens, I'm PJ Glasser. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the games tonight and enjoy all of the games again tomorrow. We will see you soon. Have a good rest of your night.